Hello class, my name is Saul Arjona and my presentation is on momentum and impulse in the game of tennis. So let's start off with the introduction. What is momentum and impulse? Momentum is a fundamental concept in physics that describes the quantity of motion an object possesses. It is represented by the product of an object's mass and velocity. So momentum equals mass times velocity. Impulse is the change in momentum of an object when a force is applied to it over a period of time. It measures how much an object's momentum changes when a force is exerted on it. So impulse equals force times time. Impulse can cause a change in an object's velocity and is directly related to the change in momentum through the impulse momentum theory. Momentum and impulse in tennis. In tennis, momentum is important for both the ball and the player. When a tennis ball is struck by a racket, it gains momentum based on the velocity of the ball. The momentum of the ball is determined by the swing of the player. The faster the speed of the racket, the greater the momentum the ball will have. Players themselves utilize momentum during the movement across the court. By moving efficiently and using proper footwork, players can build momentum to reach the ball faster and generate more power in their shots. Impulse is evident in tennis, particularly during ball and racket interactions. When a player strikes the ball with their racket, they apply force to the ball over a short period of time. This force, multiplied by the duration of contact, results in an impulse exerted on the ball. The impulse experienced by the ball causes a change in its momentum, changing its speed and direction. During player movement, impulses are exerted on the court surface as they accelerate, decelerate, and change direction. These impulses affect the player's speed and momentum, influencing their ability to reach the ball and maintain balance on the court. In both forehand and backhand strokes, mastering the principles of momentum and impulse is essential for achieving consistency, power, and precision in the game of tennis. Understanding the principles of momentum and impulse also helps players optimize their technique, timing, and movement to improve their performance and control over the game. So with that being said, let's focus on the ground strokes. There's two main types, forehand and backhand. So let's start with forehand. In tennis match play, competitors must ensure their forehand stroke accommodates to diverse conditions, including variations in the speed, spin, and bounce of the incoming ball, as well as different target areas and amounts of psychological pressure. During the backswing of a forehand stroke, muscles like gastrocnemius, soleus, quadriceps, gluteus, and hip rotators contract to load the lower legs and initiate hip rotation. Trunk rotation involves the ipsilateral internal oblique and contralateral external oblique, while eccentric contractions engage the contralateral internal oblique, ipsilateral external oblique, and abdominals and erector spinae. Shoulder and upper arm rotation in the transverse plane rely on muscles like the middle and posterior deltoid, latissimus dorsi, infraspinatus, and teres minor, followed by wrist extensor contractions. During the forward swing, these muscles work to drive the lower body and hip rotation, with obliques, back extensors, and erector spinae facilitating trunk rotation. Muscles such as latissimus dorsi, anterior deltoid, subscapularis, biceps, and pectoralis major contract to accelerate the racket towards the ball for contact. You can see all the muscles being used as shown in the picture. In the backhand stroke, during the backswing of the one-handed backhand, muscles like the gastrocnemius, soleus, quadriceps, gluteus, and hip rotators contract eccentrically to load the legs and start hip rotation. Trunk rotation involves both concentric contractions of the internal obliques and external obliques on one side, counteracted by eccentric contractions on the opposite side, including the abdominals and erector spinae. Shoulder and upper arm rotation are driven by concentric contractions of muscles like the anterior deltoid, pectoralis major, subscapularis, and wrist extensors, while eccentric contractions engage muscles like the posterior deltoid, infraspinatus, teres minor, trapezius, rhomboids, and serratus anterior. During the forward swing, the lower body and hip rotation are powered by both concentric and eccentric contractions of the aforementioned leg and hip muscles. Trunk rotation is facilitated by the obliques, back extensors, and erector spinae. The acceleration of the upper arm is achieved through concentric contractions of the muscles like the infraspinatus, teres minor, posterior deltoid, and trapezius. Again, muscles are shown in the picture. Now for the mechanical analysis or breakdown of both swings. So for the forehand, the number one thing for both, most important thing is the grip. So number one, the grip. The player typically uses an Eastern or semi-Western grip for the forehand stroke, allowing for better control and topspin generation. Number two, stance. The player adopts an open stance, positioning their body sideways to the net with the front foot slightly ahead of the back foot. Number three, preparation. The player initiates the stroke by turning their non-dominant shoulder towards the oncoming ball while simultaneously bringing the racket back, preparing for the swing. Number four, the swing. As the ball approaches, the player transfers their body weight from the back foot to the front foot while rotating their hips and shoulders in a circular motion. This generates angular momentum, increasing the racket head speed. Number five, contact. The player makes contact with the ball slightly in front of their body, ideally at waist level. The racket face is perpendicular to the net or slightly closed, depending on the desired trajectory and spin. Number six, follow through. After contact, the player continues the swinging motion, extending their arm fully towards the target and following through across their body. This completes the stroke and ensures maximum power and spin transfer to the ball. For the backhand, alright, like I said, grip is very important. So number one, grip. For a one-handed backhand, the player typically uses an Eastern or continental grip, while for the two-handed backhand, they use a double-handed grip. Number two, stance. The player adopts either an open or closed stance depending on the personal preference and the ball's trajectory. Three, preparation. Similar to the forehand stroke, the player prepares by turning their shoulders and bringing the racket back, adjusting the grip accordingly. Number four, swing. The player initiates the swing by rotating their shoulders and hips, extending their dominant arm outwards towards the ball. The non-dominant arm or hand provides support and stability throughout the stroke. Number five, contact. The player makes contact with the ball in front of their body, typically at waist height or slightly higher. The racket face is either square or slightly open, depending on the desired trajectory and spin. Number six, follow through. After contact, the player follows through the swinging motion, extending both arms toward the target. For a one-handed backhand, the follow-through typically finishes over the non-dominant shoulder, while for the two-handed backhand, it finishes across the body towards the dominant side. Common errors and injuries. Injuries. Tennis elbow. Lateral epicondylitis or tennis elbow is a common condition that presents with pain and tenderness around the common extensor origin of the elbow. It is generally regarded as an overuse injury involving repeated wrist exertion against resistance, although it can occur as an acute injury. Up to 50% of all tennis players develop symptoms due to various factors, including poor swing technique and use of heavy racket. ECU. In tennis, wrist injuries are most commonly experienced as ulnar pathology related to the extensor carpi ulnaris tendon and occur during forehand ground strokes. Errors to avoid these injuries. The location of the ball, racket impact, and grip tightness have a direct effect on the racket/arm motion and on joint torques exerted during tennis strokes. Excessive use of wrist extensors causes microtrauma and micro tears on the extensor tendons, which are associated with tennis elbow. This study suggests that due to high wrist extension torques, off-center impacts on the lower part of the racket may be a substantial contributing factor for the tennis elbow with a tight grip, aggravating the effect. In summary, momentum and impulse play crucial roles in the game of tennis, influencing both the movement of the ball and the player's performance on the court. Momentum, defined as the quantity of motion an object possesses, is determined by the product of its mass and velocity, while impulse represents the change in momentum resulting in the application of force over time. In tennis, players utilize momentum to generate power in their shots and optimize their movement across the court. During the forehand and backhand strokes, various muscle groups are engaged to execute precise movement and generate force. These strokes involve intricate coordination of the lower body, trunk, and upper body muscles to achieve optimal swing mechanics and power generation. To optimize performance and reduce the risk of injuries, tennis players should focus on maintaining proper stroke technique, including grip and ball racket impact location, and implementing strategies to minimize excessive use of wrist extensors. By understanding the principles of momentum and impulse and applying them effectively, players can enhance their overall performance and enjoyment of the game. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.